are back for workshop 3 of the Profitable Intensive. If you've been joining me over the last number of days, we have covered a lot of stuff. But if this is the very first time that you are joining me, then sit back, grab a pen and paper, and get ready to catch up on lots of great content, especially if you're looking to build your influence, build your reach as a trusted authority in your field. So I noticed when I logged in today to the system that I had accidentally put this for going live at 9 p.m., but it's actually 9 a.m. So ta-da, here I am. But if this is, you are here live, I see a number of people here. Leave a comment in the comment box if you would, where you're ringing in from, watching from. I don't know why I say ringing in from. Hey, Kayleen, good morning to you as well. I know you've been here over the last couple of days. But if you're also watching the replay, let me know by just adding hashtag replay. Well, hello, this is the first time here. Well, we've got lots and lots to cover. So continue to put your comments in there. I'm kind of one of those people that just loves to get started. So let's do that, shall we? Okay, I want to share my screen with you. Here we go. So this is workshop 3. If you are joining me for the first time, don't worry. In the group, so podcastingwithpurpose.com/community, you will be able to see workshop 1, workshop 2, as well as the 2 Q&As that we have had. Make sure you come back tomorrow, same time. This is 9 a.m. in Australia. So I think that's about 7 p.m. Eastern Australia time. So if you're in the US, where we'll do a bit of a snapshot overview so that you can certainly catch up. This is specifically for people who are looking to build their business online with a robust podcast strategy to help you build your reach, your reputation, and your revenue. This is not just a podcasting course. If you want to do just a podcasting course and know the technology to get it out there in the, out into the podcast players, go to YouTube. There are a lot of great free courses. This is actually about business building your business integrated with a podcast. My name's Anne-Marie Cross. I've also been known as the podcasting queen. It was not a title I gave myself, but something that people started to refer to me as. And a number of years ago, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to embrace that title. But my background very much is in personal branding, communications. And of course, now I wrap that up and we're doing a lot of podcast strategy for our clients. How to get the best from this event, switch off everything you've heard the people say that all before, or marketers when we're doing these types of trainings. But it's so important, especially for this one and any training that I do, because everything that I share, it's not fluff, it's not banter, it's good quality content. And in actual fact, I've had people reach out to me and I've even seen the comments, Anne-Marie, I can't believe that you're sharing all of this. Actually, I had someone, bless her heart, message me on LinkedIn. She said, are you actually monetizing the back end of this? And I said, yep, because what I teach, I also do, because I know that it works. So absolutely. So if you're blown away by the content that I'm sharing, these are things that you need to know. As I said, it's business building. But wait till I know some of you are going to be rolling into my programs. That's when we really take what we're learning now and make it relevant to you and really integrate that, take action and the right steps at the right time. So hope you've got your favorite beverage. I've got my water with me. So let's dive in. I'm just going to recap this one more time because I think it's so important. Often we can assume that when something is free, that it is not valuable. Well, not in my world. Everything that I share needs to have intention. I don't do small talk. In fact, those conversations where people are talking about all things which it just doesn't interest me. I want to talk about things that are going to make a difference in your life and the impact the lives of others, because my mission is to help other mission-driven entrepreneurs and business owners who are on this planet to make a difference in the world with the clients that they're here to serve and support, take their message out in a much bigger way. So if you're feeling invisible, you know that you've got a body of knowledge and work and to share with others, but you just haven't been able to reach that level where you can do that at scale. You are in the right place. Leave any self-doubt behind and overwhelm as well. I am going quite quickly through this, but I'm not expecting you to learn everything. In fact, I want you to walk away far more informed about some of the things that you need to have in place, some of the things that you can give yourself a big fat tick and go, you know what, we've got, my team and I have got this covered. And if it's only you and your business, I've got this covered. And then also an awareness of the things that you need to do. I'm all about being informed so that we can make the right decision. I'm not about trying to get you through this so that hopefully you'll sign up. You'll know whether it's right or not. And at the end of the workshops and sessions this week, my calendar is open so that we can have a chat to make sure that whatever decision that you make, that it is the right decision for you. Leverage the action guide. If you haven't already downloaded it yet, just grab any pen and paper, and then you can go back, circle back round, and I'll let you know where you can download the action guide, and so that you can catch up on some of those notes. And I am only scratching the surface today. And what you'll often find, and I know that I have found as a business owner over the last 20 something years, is that the more you learn, the more you realize that you don't really know that much, but it's called layered learning. And I know that sometimes when I go back and listen to something again, because I'm listening to it or watching it with a new lens, a clearer lens, all of a sudden something clicks and it's like, I never realized that before, because you're now ready to implement at that higher level. And this, as I said, is all about business building and podcasting. In fact, one of the things that I've often said to my colleagues, I do not want to create a course that is focused on tech. I love tech, love tech. To me, tech is my toys, and I've probably got too many toys in my cupboard, and microphones and things that I've used over the years. But I know that that's not going to make a difference in the impact that you're going to, or you want to make in your business. So we got Jenny Wilkins. Hi, Anne Marie. She says, Jenny from Melbourne messaged you on LinkedIn yesterday. Yes. Thank you, Jenny. Good to see you. Another Melburnian. So we get to connect because we're not allowed out. We are all in curfew and on lockdown. But anyway, we've got technology, so they cannot stop us from getting out onto the internet. So if you've got any questions, leave them in the comment below. Tomorrow, come back. I'll also be answering questions as I go through the catch up, because I want to make sure that you are again as informed to make the right decision for you. I love these couple ahas. So fit two in the slide today, but I think that they really captured some of the essence of the learnings that I wanted many of you, or all of you actually, to walk away with. And one of them was the value of getting specific about the reach, reputation, and revenue that this person wanted her podcast to generate. She said, being a conscious junkie, I often fall into letting things happen instead of planning to make them happen. Always an interesting paradox to navigate. Thank you so much for this intensive. Absolutely. I remember years ago in the career industry, we had a term. It wasn't a term that I made up, but a term that would often determine, people talk about coincidence. Well, I don't believe in coincidence. I believe everything that happens is happened, destined for a reason. But this term was called planned happenstance. So happenstance is kind of just things happening at random. However, there's some planning involved. And I think often what I tend to do is I do like to plan, but then once I plan and I know that I bring my best to the work that I'm doing and the things that I need to implement, the rest will take care of itself. And if I don't get the results that I want, then I backtrack and I think, could I do something better? Maybe I didn't show up as I should have. Could I tweak? Maybe I need to change some things. So I love that you've said that, but there has to be strategy. I think you can't just kind of, what's that saying, throw mud at the wall and hope it sticks. And I remember, and I draw a lot from my career industry work because I think it's relevant in business. I remember many clients that I worked with would not think about their career, like career management, have an idea on where they wanted to head, the kind of courses that they wanted to do, the projects that they wanted to position themselves for. And all of a sudden something happened, unexpected market changes or whatever. We're now in one of those situations where something unexpected has happened, and now they had to go back and reevaluate what next, what now. And I think in business, there has to be a level of strategy. and robust strategy. And that's why I'm sharing what I've learned, because I do that through the lens of a service-based business. Because in all of my career, that's what I've been doing, is selling knowledge and expertise. And I know that you are as well, many of you here. And there's certain processes and there's relationship building that needs to be done. And I'm going to dive deeper into some of the things that I've been observing and I think is going to be very, very important moving forward for businesses. And Kayleen, keep coming back to clarity. Biggest aha was to know your formula, the gaps and the specific end goals for your buyer's journey. Then to intentionally plan the pipeline so that everyone wins. Absolutely. I'm always supporting and helping, but need to keep my end goals in mind while serving. Absolutely. Sometimes, as business owners, especially if we feel service driven, mission driven, we want to lead with integrity and excellence, which is all fantastic. But what we do is we forget, we go to the opposite extreme, don't we? And we forget to invite people to work with us. We forget to extend an invitation. Now, believe it or not, this is a huge lesson that I learned, is that people would often be waiting for me to either invite them or say, I'd love to work with you, because they were thinking, there is no way that I'm ready yet to work with Anne Marie, or would she really want to work with me? And it's kind of doing a dance, around each other, and invite them. And if the answer is no, that is fine, because often the answer is not really no, but rather not yet. Or someone has to sort out some of the things in their own life or business before they really feel ready. And that is, I think, your role as a business owner, is to share great content and then support people in getting to a stage where they're ready. But when they are, guess who they're going to say yes to? You. Now, who loves prizes? I'll share a little bit more about how you can go into the draw for the winning of my scholarship, the 90-day idea to launch, where you and I and a group of awesome change makers work together from idea right through to launch. We'll catapult you out into the world, supporting you all every step of the way. And one of the things that I say to my clients is, once you're in my world, I'll never leave you, because I'm always there, either, not stalking you, but there to support. And I know that sometimes, you go into some courses or programs, and then as soon as the program finishes, your mentor disappears. Well, I'm not like that, because especially now, I think in this world, collaboration, support, we need one another. Together, we are so much better. And together, we can have so much more fun and impact in the world in a much bigger way. How awesome is that going to be? So, I'm just going to recap briefly workshop 2. That's where I talked about my podcast profit models. And these models came out of the systems and processes that I documented, that I was doing, and I documented them because I knew I wanted to teach it to others. For many of you, you're in a situation where you've been doing something and doing something quite uniquely. And so now you may need to be at a position where you need to start documenting those so that you can teach them as well. But the formulas for me, well, the models for me were the podcast profit formula, the framework, and of course the pipeline. And we dove into the framework because the framework, as you know, was all around the strategy. So let me just talk briefly about each of these. Model 1 was the formula, which are the components. And this is where Kaineen was saying she got an aha. So this is the 3 things that you need to have in place. All of them are important. And I knew that when I look back and, looked at the podcast that I was co-hosting and some of the other podcasts as well, there were only 2 of those 3 components, or sometimes even 1, which was why on the equal end, which is influence, impact, and income, I never really was able to generate that income. And so these are the things that you need to have in place to also go from invisible to influential and profitable. The strategy, which is the framework that helps you take your overall podcast from idea to launch, and then helping you also plan every single episode after that. Now, again, I'm talking, at the end there, it's purpose, plan, produce, publish, promote, and profit. I mean, every single podcast episode, I always think of what's the end in mind, what's the call to action for those people who are ready, what's the step that I want them to take. And then I basically look at, well, what's the content pieces, what's the format, what's the structure. and that becomes the storyline in the whole podcast episode. So that's something that I still follow every single time that I develop a podcast. It's almost second nature for me now. And of course, we talked about the profit pipeline, which I'm going to dive deeper into today, which is really the overall process where intentionally it is integrated. And the 5 pillars of success, where we talked about it being invisible and then having to gain insight into key areas. And often people don't do enough insight so that they can't build intrigue with their content. Once you're building intrigue and you're starting to generate interest, and you then want to implement a podcast strategy or any real marketing strategy where you want to take your business results to scale and your marketing to scale, you need to integrate it, because otherwise you're doing too many things and you're being stretched way too far. And that's where we talk about the pipeline, where things are integrated into one another, and it's a whole momentum building process so that you don't have to start things from scratch. And then when you start to get higher level clients, then you can put some money aside to invest in team, and they can then do a lot of this for you. And that's what we're going to talk a bit about today. And this is the process actually that I use to be able to nurture listeners into leads and then ultimately paying customers. So I'm going to dive into that a bit today. But I've mentioned this before and I'm saying it again because it is so important for those of you who have a body of knowledge that you are positioned to go to trusted authority in your industry, or even some of you who are, that's the goal, because you know that what you're talking about and what you're bringing to the conversation is very much unique and different from what everyone else is doing. People come for the topic, they return for the host with a podcast. And so here's where I want to introduce you to my podcast positioning quadrant. This is something that I developed probably a couple of months ago after observing what was happening in the marketplace. And when I looked at various people's responses as to why they, what was happening and why they were stuck. And I recognized there were some commonalities. And I also look at other aspects of, when I tap into digital marketing experts who talk about the value of community and behaviors of consumers. We humans are fascinating creatures, aren't we? I think so anyway. And so when I kind of put that all together, I recognized that when things were happening, we were able to really elevate and become that trusted authority. But here's what I recognize. So this quadrant, if you see on the left or going up, you see audience, and this is from low to high. An audience is really the people who are listening to you. And it even is your audience, your community that is starting to follow your content across all of the different platforms that you're in. But podcasting, of course, is where we're focusing today. Then across the bottom here, you have authority, again from low to high. And as I walk through, you'll be able to understand what I'm talking about. Now, if someone has got a low engaged audience and they're not really, and I'm going to talk about what an audience, a community that you need to start building. If that's low and there's low authority, there's no real expertise whatsoever, then someone who might start a podcast can be a kind of reach an entertainer. They're an entertainer. And there's nothing wrong with this. I'm not bagging an entertainer. I mean, this may be the purpose. They just want to have a podcast and get people on and have a chat. That is fine. But of course, if you're a business, there are some aspects that you want to consider. You don't just want to be seen as an entertainer. Let's have a look at the next step. Now, this is where someone is starting to build a highly engaged audience. It's an audience that likes these people. They are there listening. They're there because they want to hang out with that particular person. Now, because of that higher engagement and that audience of community, and they've got some similarities, that's when someone can become an influencer or a celebrity. Again, nothing wrong with that. That might be something that you're looking to achieve. Now, if we go along the bottom where the audience isn't really highly engaged, but the high aspect is around the authority, expertise, someone would be seen as an expert. So again, they've got high level of expertise. And this is where I talk about people come for the topic and they come for the topic and then off they go. So they may be Googling something, and then there's this particular topic on an aspect that that person is interested in. They listen and then off they go. We do that too on websites, don't we? We'll see an article, we'll read it, and then off we go. Now, here's what happens, which is really interesting. When we are able to build a highly engaged audience and have a high level of authority and expertise, we then can become that trusted authority where people come for the topic and they'll return for the host because they like the way that you are engaging. They like the way that you speak. They like your core values. Let's talk about, and that's of course where you want to be. You want to be seen as that trusted authority. And where you rank, where you sit on that podcasting quadrant or positioning quadrant is very important, especially if you want to be seen as that trusted authority so that you can then nurture those listers into leads. So you can monetize your message. And let's talk a little bit about the three components that I think is really important. There are another two components which I've shared in previous workshops here and the Q&As. I won't really go into today, which are, of course, collateral and collaborations. Collateral is the core components, the models that you create, the Thought Leader podcast series. And, of course, the collaborations are the guests, the strategic and intentional guests that you invite on your show. So let's talk about these three. And when they intersect, that is when you become that trusted authority. So it's community, it's content, and charisma. And I've done some articles and some podcast episodes about this because I think these are fascinating topics. But the community that you're building moving forward with your podcast, this is why I always stress the importance of knowing who your ideal customer is, your ideal client, because if you build a community where the community, the body of everyone there, they have a common desire and they have a common challenge, either or both. But they feel connected and they feel valued and they feel understood. And if they resonate with the culture that you're creating as part of that community, they will enjoy being part of that community. It's almost like, oh, actually, I won't say almost like. I remember many years ago, I was part of a high level coaching program, and one of the members was moving on, and she said, "You know what?" I said, "Even though I feel ready and I'm ready to go out into the world, kind of thing," she said, "I'm going to miss this community." Because it's the community that, I just love and I feel really supported. But that's the kind of thing that you want to create, that as soon as you launch a podcast episode, people are hanging out, they're wanting to listen to it, they want to binge listen. The content needs to be highly niched and it has to be relevant to your community. It has to be seen as innovative and market leading, especially if you want to become known as that trusted authority that's challenging the status quo, that is a thought leader in your industry. And you don't need to be a Musk. You don't need to be someone who's completely changing and bringing in innovations that have never been created. You don't need to do that. You just need to be the voice of difference, the voice of reason, the voice that is doing something in your industry that the body or segment of that industry goes, finally, someone who makes sense to me. So you need to be a thought leader in their particular world for them because you are the one that they want to work with. And of course, you need to have your content being validated. It has to be trusted and highly respected. And charisma, this is really your presence. This is what captivates and influences. Now, there's nothing that you need to reinvent of yourself. In actual fact, and in all of my work that I've done, and even I've noticed myself, often it is stripping off the labels that people have put on you, the expectations that you thought you needed to be for other people or how you thought you needed to act. But really, it is getting very clear on the unique characteristics and mannerisms that you bring to the table, along with, of course, the way that you communicate your story, your journey, your expertise, that very much can influence that charisma too. But you cultivate, because the confidence that you're building, but you cultivate this united passion and purpose, and you influence and inspire others. It's like they can't help but hang out with you. They want to hang out with you. They love what you're talking about. You inspire them. And in actual fact, when you've been in their presence, and this could be through a podcast, this is what I'm saying. If you create a level of influence and create that unique experience, people will love hanging out with you. And it's as if they know you. Because they will get to know you because they're listening to your podcast. So, those are the three things that I really wanted to share with you today. That's really important, especially from that trusted authority. Let's dive deeper into the model 3, which is the podcast profit pipeline. Let's talk a little bit about that. Why is this process so important? I'm not going to share something with you or encourage you to do something if it's fluff or banter, or if it's not relevant and if it's not important. This is so very important because only a small number of people or small percentage of people are ready to buy right now. And I know, and because I've been there before myself, is that if you have got to start your marketing strategy or your marketing initiatives from scratch every time that you bring in one new client, by the time you get that client and you've got to start all over again through that process, you're going to be exhausted. You are going to be exhausted. I know because I've been there and done that. We're service-based businesses. So part of that process is needing to be teaching, it's needing to be engaging, it's needing to do maybe a discovery call to see if you're a good fit. There's a lot of time and investment into that. Wouldn't it be great if you could automate some of that, get the right content in the right sequence, in the right order to work for you, so that you are just fielding calls for those people who really are part of the community, who you would say are your ideal clients. So this is something that I heard when I went to a marketing seminar. Some of the figures may be a little bit different, but I think not too different. Maybe even a little bit less now because of what's going on in the world. People are a little bit weary, aren't they? They're hanging on to their money. With investing. So you may need to tweak your business model slightly, maybe some of your pricing options slightly, just to get through this season. But you still can certainly be sharing valuable information and planting and nurturing seeds. That's what we should all be doing as business owners. But if we have a look at this model, 55% approximately of people are unaware. Now, not only are they unaware of you, don't tell them I told you this, but they're probably unaware that they've got an issue. You know what? Bless them. Good luck to them. You don't want to target these people. And often what we do as business owners, we want to target everyone. And then we get disappointed when no one is saying yes. Well, maybe you need to really hone down who you're focusing on and begin to nurture them. So 25% are aware of their issues or their challenges, and 25% or some of those people may start to become aware of you if you've got the right content, where they're finding that content, and then, of course, you've got that nurturing process. 17% of people approximately are in decision making mode. So they've already gone through some of the evaluation, some of the process. Everyone's got a buying system, and so they've gone part way through that and they realize, yep, I am going to get support. I'm just trying to figure out who and what that is going to look like. Wouldn't it be great if you were part of that conversation, even if you're not there, say with your podcast series? And then about 3% are buying. Now, that 3% is probably even smaller when it comes to your ideal client. Not everybody is your ideal client. So I know often when we're starting out in business, we'll work with just about anyone just to get some runs on the board. But when you get to a stage where you've refined your programs, you can be a little bit more discerning in who you work with. And that's a win-win for everybody, I think, because there's nothing worse than working with someone who's got a bit of different core values to you, and different approach to you, and you feel like you're speaking a different language. I know for me, there's certain styles of people that I think I could work with them, I could adapt. But what I'm talking about, those people, because we're all coaches and consultants, those people that we feel like we need to kind of hibernate to our caves for 24 hours to recoup our energy. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could work with clients, and you can, by the way, who you just bounce ideas off one another and everything's working and in flow? That's the kind of people that you want to be intentionally reaching out to with your content in your podcast. I mentioned this, the three stages of the buyer's journey, but this is really important to understand right now because it fits into the model, the profit model that I'm talking about, which is, of course, your pipeline. The three stages of the buyer's journey, I like to keep things quite simple. So I've kind of narrowed that down to three stages, which really is awareness, consideration, and decision. So stage one, awareness, stage two, consideration, and stage three, decision. So let's have a look at what this looks like in the pipeline. So we have the awareness stage, which I call your brand communications wheel. Now, this, of course, can include your ongoing podcast. You can also be speaking. For many of us now, that's online, of course. You might be writing articles and blog posts. You might be across a number of social media platforms. You might also be networking online. And for those of us who are not in lockdown, you might actually be doing some humaning and peopling. Us, not so much, but one day we will be able to. So that's kind of your brand communications wheel may look quite different. You may only have a few different things. I'm a bit of a multi-passionate person, so I like to do a number of different things, but that's kind of how I build awareness. Through different articles that I write, through my podcast, and that's kind of out there being found when you use the right keywords. There's a whole lot of strategies around that, of course, so that you can ensure that your content is not only found but consumed because someone's interested in really listening or watching or reading your content. But then what I do is with the brand communications wheel, then I invite people to sign up and access my three-part podcast series, which is then the consideration stage because I'm nurturing people, I'm educating them, I'm engaging with them, and I'm enticing them to take that next step, helping them realize that they're in the right place and I have the ability to support them in overcoming their challenges and achieving their outcomes. There's some emails within that. This is just a really basic diagram. But then you get to a stage where you ask someone to make a decision. And again, don't be tied to the outcome. Some people will say yes, fantastic. Others will say no, and that's fantastic too, because there is so much business in the world. There's plenty for everyone. That's the podcast profit pipeline. I'm going to go a little bit deeper into some of the things that I have done that has worked really well. As I do this, I want you to do a bit of an internal audit or a check. What am I doing currently? But also from the mindset of, remember, I talked about being integrated. Are the things that you are doing supporting one another? Often when I'm working with a client, I'll do a bit of a brand audit, and this can even be like a content audit. And when I have a look at different social media profiles, what they're saying over on LinkedIn is very different to Twitter, and so there's no cohesion there, and you do not want to confuse your ideal customers because as they start doing a bit of a search for you, and they will when they start to become familiar with you and really enjoy your content, they will start to look at other platforms. So you want to make sure that that's consistent. But again, what are you doing in your brand communications that consistently getting the right message out to the right clients? And if that's not happening for you very well or consistently through at least one or two other mechanisms, then I would highly encourage you to go back and have a look at why that's not working before you launch a podcast. Because, as I said, a podcast is not a silver bullet, it is not a band aid solution. Don't be incorporating a podcast on top of something that's not working because it's not going to work for you. It will amplify what is already working for you. So if you're not building awareness, you need to go back to your content strategy. Actually, you need to enroll in my core business foundations program first for the 3 months. Let's get that working for you. That opens up in September. This September. Okay, so consideration stage. This is what I call my thought leader podcast series. Now, I don't call it a thought leader podcast series. I'm sharing with you what that is and what I mean by that. This is quality content that you will take your clients through or prospective customers through or referral partners through or alliance partners through. In fact, just a couple of days ago, I had a conversation with someone. We're now looking at doing a reciprocal interview for one another because we've got similar audiences. And he said, I went through your series. He said, it was excellent. He said, It was, yeah. And that's what it should be. People should be go, my goodness, I've had other conversations where even veterans in business have shown me their, A4 paper and have gone, I took notes. So that's the kind of stuff that you want to put in your series, because you're nurturing them from just getting to know you, awareness to consideration, and to the point where they know that they don't just want to work with you, they need to work with you, because you are the person, and with the content and the support, and creating it in an environment and an experience that resonates with who they are and where they're going to do their best work. And then decision stage. This is where you've got a general call to action, and it doesn't have to be salesy at all. It can just be, I'd love to work with you. Can we have a conversation? And then I'd love to work with you. If this is a yes from me, from you, it is a heck yes from me. Let's do this. Don't have to be tied to it, but you have to ask them. That you don't want to be like that person who. Actually, I watched a movie. We watching a movie yesterday about a gentleman and a man and a woman who are going out together, and they are playing around with each other. And it's like, for goodness sake, just ask her to marry. I'll ask her on your behalf for you. You don't want to be tiptoeing around. Just ask. They say no, that's fine. Maybe it's not yet. So ask. So here are some examples of what I'm doing, because I want to just share with you some of the things that that's worked really well for me. And this may be something that, you can consider as well. But awareness for me, I do a lot of podcasting, as you probably have gathered, and I enjoy live streaming as well. So when I'm podcasting and interviewing with people, I'm also streaming that live. So there's actually 3 different touch points in that area, because it's the live stream when it's going live at the time. It's the audio podcast, which then gets published down the track, and then it's an evergreen video, because the video stays across the platforms. And of course, when I do my interviews, it can be across 8 different platforms, but primarily LinkedIn, Facebook, so Facebook group, Facebook pages, um, where else? Twitter and Periscope and YouTube. So, across those different platforms. And that is really where my ideal client is hanging out. Primarily, I think also too on LinkedIn is a platform that I'm really focusing on now. Social media. So we do social media posts, graphics, videos, networking, primarily online for me, and some in person, and speaking both virtually and in person as well. And that speaking can also involve being on other people's podcast episodes. But what you do need to have in place is that compelling call to action too. And this is where many people don't have in place. And that is the podcast series, which is the tactic, in the formula, which is the strategy, the tactic plus you. So that this is the tactic that I use. And so my specific podcast series takes my ideal client, who is a coach, a service-based business, who is struggling to either get clients or break through a certain income level, because I know there's only so many hours in the day, and if clients are still charging by the hour, it's very difficult to scale. So what I tend to, and then be seen as a trusted authority, not just any old coach, but the coach in the industry, in his or her industry. So my podcast series starts off with key foundations to stand out from the crowd and being seen as an authority in your field. So it shares what they need to have in place. Episode 2 covers 5 common barriers that'll keep you stuck from becoming known as an authority in your field. So I talk about mindset, because I know that I can teach people the strategies, the practical steps, give them the tools, the technologies. But if they don't have the right mindset, which is also my background and training, done a lot of mindset coaching and training, then they're still going to remain stuck. Then in episode 3, this is where I talk about the system, the program, and the process that'll enable them to turn increased influence and impact into significant outcome. Where I talk about having group coaching programs, or creating a marketing strategy that can continue to work for you while you're asleep. Then you integrate a podcast strategy on top of that, because then I go, well, go and listen to the bonus episode. And this is where I start to talk about the podcast and how they can start to nurture listeners into leads and paying customers. Because not everybody is interested in podcasting, and that's okay. But if they are, then I want them to know, well, look, we can support you to get you to a stage where you could generate a very healthy, profitable income for yourself. But if you want to really take that to the next level with your publicity and your visibility and your reach, then you can certainly implement a podcast strategy on top of that. So that's kind of what my stage 2 looks like. We include episode transcripts there. I've got an Are You Ready to Launch quiz. This is something that I get all of my clients to work on as part of creating their collateral, because when every single piece of document needs to educate, but it also needs to allow your ideal clients to see where the gaps are. Because often we find that ideal clients will go, well, this is really great, I'm going to implement, but they're not going to be able to achieve the results. I mean, I've only probably given you 10% of what needs to happen under. It's like the iceberg, isn't it? The iceberg, we give a little bit of information and they go, think, oh great, I'm going to have success. But you don't realize the big iceberg underneath the water, all of the foundations that you need to have in place. So you also need to, as part of your collateral, have content that will still empower the clients to think, yeah, this is going to be successful for me too, but also realize the reason it will be is because you'll be there supporting them along the way. Then there's a bonus video, there's an email sequence, and then that leads to the 5-day profitable podcasting intensive. So what you're experiencing now is very much part of an intentional strategy to educate, and for those people who are ready to then go, yep, want to go into that next process or that next program. So that's the kind of thing that you want to create in your pipeline as well, in your strategy. And so again, recapping, these are the things that you need to identify, because when I'm doing a bit of an audit with someone, they'll say, well, I'm not generating any clients. Now, there could be so many different reasons why that would not be happening for them. So, one of the things I'll often ask is, well, how many inquiries are you getting? Well, I'm only getting a few inquiries. Well, okay, let's backtrack, because often where the issue is not where the issue is. It's not the cause of the issue. It's only the symptoms. So not generating enough leads is the symptom. The cause is maybe the content that you're sharing is not really standing out from everyone else. Maybe you haven't got an effective call to action because, like me, you assume people listen to your podcast and then go rushing over to your website to find out how they can work with you. Not going to happen. So there's different areas. So again, you need to then identify, where am I getting stuck, or where do I need to really focus on so that I can take what I'm doing to the next level. And for some of you, it might be, I need to start from scratch, and that's okay. So, brand communication wheel, thought leader podcast series, and the 5-day profitable podcast intensive kind of is really the process that is part of my journey. Now, when I'm talking about series, the podcast series, this is very different from the ongoing podcast. Just to let you know about that. It's very much a stand on its own that nurtures people. That becomes your opt-in, or what I like to call your irresistible signature giveaway. So I want to ask you, what's the time? 9:43. I've got coaching session at 10 o'clock with my Changemaker clients who are just about to launch their podcast. But these are the questions that I want to leave with you today: is how will you continue to build awareness of you, your expertise, and if you decide that you're going to create that thought leader series or some form of opt-in. For some of you, you might be thinking, I'm not quite ready for a podcast yet. Then you still need to have these things in place. You still need to have some form of opt-in that is so compelling that people cannot wait to access it. So that's what you need to think about. Then consideration stage is what specific content that you can include. And if you're doing a podcast, because you know that a podcast is definitely part of your strategy moving forward, then you really do need to consider leveraging that medium of communication through audio and creating a specific special series that you can get people off the podcast onto your list, listing and engaging to that. But it has to engage and it has to educate and it has to entice your client to take the next step when you share your call to action. I'll get to your question in a moment, Kayleen. That's a great question. Now, when I talk about the word entice, I'm not saying that from a scummy, salesy, pushy way. I'm talking about that because often when we market to people's objections. What are their objections? Can't do it. It's not going to work for me. I've tried everything else. But in your heart of hearts that if you were to support your client and in implementing the steps that you teach and that work, they are going to generate results. That's what I'm talking about when you entice someone. It is kind of that expected invitation of this is going to work for you. You've just got to commit to taking action and the right action. So this is a great question that Kaylin says, are your 3-part series on your podcast list? Do you republish it? Great question. So, what I do is I actually do publish my first 3 episodes, or actually 4 for me, are live. Anyone can access it. However, where the value is also in the sequence and the transcripts and the other things as well, because I want people to be able to access that too. And so I that's what I do. I have it open and then I also have it as an opt-in with additional things and the quiz and other things as well. So I've got one client I think who wanted to keep it behind a squeeze page. So in other words, people had to sign up for it to access it. So their podcast actually started from episode 4. We said to them, look, try it out and see how it works. That's like anything in business. I mean, I was speaking to someone a couple of days ago, the person who said to me, your podcast series is excellent. And I was thankful that he said that. And to me, it was it was validation, because this person does the same, but with a webinar strategy. And I love to speak with other people who are, doing great things in their industry, because I can certainly learn from them as well. And I said, how long did it take you to get that sequence working for you? He said 2 years. I think from memory, 2 years. That is a huge eye opener for many of us in business, because we often think we try something, it doesn't work for us, and off we go. Obviously, you have to be able to monitor and tweak and keep changing things up. But why I share that is that you might try something. I mean, if you've got to have the right content there. And that's why I say to people, Kayleen, with your a 3-part series, that series is really needs to be um, thought leader quality. It has to really be the best of your work, speaking into the life of that person who's listening to it. So don't just think, I'm going to grab a microphone and I'm just going to start recording. Similar to episode 0. That's actually when you start building rapport with people's episode 0. But your story needs to touch upon the milestones and the markers of your ideal client. Your story has to be relevant to them. It really has got nothing to do with you. It shouldn't be an obituary, but rather a promise of expectation, a promise of value that you're guiding them, through that buyer's journey. So I hope that helps. Hope that answered that question. And then, of course, the decision stage. What is your compelling call to action? And when I say compelling, it is where someone says, you know what, I can't not do this. I can't not do this because I'm going to be doing the same thing over and over again and getting the same result over and over again. It has to compel them to take action, which of course is to make a decision. And often there's a reason why we don't do that as coaches. And as that is because if I ask and the answer is no, that's going to deflate my self-worth and my self-belief. But sometimes, not sometimes, all the time, you want to get them to make an answer, to commit, because it's going to be empowering for them, even if it's a no, and it's empowering for you because then you can then to let them move aside so that you can start focusing on your ideal client. But you need to determine first, what is that step going to be? Phew, we covered a lot of content, didn't we? So hopefully you have now layered on the learning and be mindful and now understanding how I'm actually using my podcast. It's not just a random audio that I put together and I threw out there on Apple and all of the different Spotify's and all that. It really is integral, it's intentional, and it's nurturing the relationship with my ideal customer. So, this is a recap of what we talked about today. The process, which was the podcast profit pipeline, the process that you take your ideal customers through from just getting to know you, awareness, right through to decision. Yes, I want to work with you. Or sometimes you might actually be saying to that person, no, I don't think we're a good fit, but let me refer you on to so and so. So, we talked about the 3 stages of the buyer's journey. We talked about the brand communications wheel. All of these things you should be having in your business, even if you're not having a podcast strategy. We talked about your Thought Leader podcast series, and we talked about how it is intentionally integrated. This is the pipeline so that it works for you 24/7, 365 days a year, nurturing listeners into leads, inquiries, and paying customers from your very first episode. Something that I want to share within this is something else that I see many businesses who are podcasting doing, and I used to do as well, but I realize now that it's not integrally using my podcast as a way, in my pipeline, and that is to have so many interviews that are recorded and in the pipeline ready to go and launch. How do you know? I mean, your podcast needs to be integrated with your marketing calendar. How can you know what your marketing, well, you should know, kind of have a bit of an idea of what your marketing calendar is doing next May or March or, at the beginning of next year. So please, 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 for those of you who maybe have already got a podcast in place, don't just be interviewing people and having them, in the buffer ready to release, because the podcast episodes and the topics that you need to be talking about need to be seeding and leading people into whatever you're doing as part of your marketing. So if you are going to a launch like my intensive, the podcast episodes and the conversations that you should be speaking into, maybe even a week or two, needs to be speaking into that. So just saying that as a bit of a heads up. This is one of the reasons why I see others struggling, because the strategy that they're using is not really what I would call a strategy to build reach, reputation, and revenue from business building perspective. Okay, the prize, the prize, the prize, the prize. How to get into the winning? Well, first, what the prize is, because you might go, I'm not going to bother doing that. That's not really exciting. I hope this is. This is my 90-day idea to launch your Thought Leader podcast program. It's the scholarship to that. It is a jam-packed program, bonuses, all the good things. Again, helping you to do everything that I've been sharing over the last number of days and then some. Often we will go and have a look at your business model. Because I bring that kind of oversight over. If we think, let's develop some programs in between your program pathway so that you can really start to have this beautiful sequence of nurturing existing customers into long-term customers and ambassadors of your business. So we kind of look at that as well. So one of my clients currently said, oh, I thought I was joining a podcast program. It's a personal development program and business development program. Yes. Private launch consultation call with me to map out your podcast pipeline. I often find that that's a challenge for people because they don't have that in place. Calls and all that good stuff. There's a lot more in there, but anyway, I only had so much time space on the slide, but that's valued at $3,497. How do you enter? Well, watch all of the 3 episode workshops and then share your biggest aha. And you'll find where to share your biggest aha if you go to podcastingwithpurpose.com/community. And in the feed and the announcements, you'll see aha workshop 1, aha workshop 2, and in about 10 past 10, there's a scheduled post to come out for what's your biggest aha for workshop 3. So pop your comment in workshop 3. There's already someone there that is taking the lead, just saying. So you've got a bit of catching up to do. Bonus points if you take a picture of you with your action guide and share it across different socials and stuff like that. Seeing you getting into action, that's great. And the winner is going to be announced at the celebration party on Monday, which is where I share a little bit more. Well, I do share about the podcasting program. So if this is something that is of interest of you, do come back on my Monday, which is Sunday evening in the US, because again, I want you to be informed and I want to share what's included in that. But to find out more, podcast about the entry and winning, podcastingwithpurpose.com/win. Now, I've got a few more minutes. I've just got a couple more slides of sharing, but if you've got a question about anything I covered today, let me know and I'll look to answer that before I go before 10 o'clock. But tomorrow, same time, podcastingwithpurpose.com/catch up, I'm going to do an overview of what I spoke about, some of the key points. Remember, I talked about layered learning. Well, come on back. It's Saturday here for us. If you're in Melbourne, you're not really going to be doing anything else. So why not come and hang out with me? That link will be live because I've got to schedule the call with StreamYard. But come on back, or if you're part of the community, you'll see me go live. And I'm actually going to be sharing that across different platforms too. But that's going to be a lot of fun too. And we get an opportunity to hang out again and answer your questions. Then, of course, my Monday, the link will be podcastingwithpurpose.com/party, where I'll be sharing who the winner is. So you've got a bit of time to catch up, share your ahas, start sharing some of the social posts of you planning and going through this process. Tag me in those so that I know that you're sharing that, and you can go into the draw for the scholarship. And then of course I'll be sharing more about what the program entails for those of you who are ready to do that. And even if you've already got a podcast and you think, well, I know that what I'm doing is not working, this could certainly be a good option for you as well. All right, what questions do you have? Got a few more minutes that I can keep hanging out and making sure. Let's have a look. Kayleen's got a great question. Let me remove this. Which of the platforms would you consider most valuable? If you could do them all, what would you select as must have? So when you say platform, Kayleen, do you mean looking at your brand communications wheel? Can you just confirm that? I have a feeling that that's it, but I just want to make sure, clarify which of those platforms. Is that what you mean? Just waiting. There's a little bit of a delay um, between me reading the question and then you hearing the video. I'm going to assume that she is because I see the time ticking. So, which are the platforms? So, if you're thinking about your brand communication wheel, which way are you going to be selecting to build your awareness? First and foremost, I would say go with something that fits your natural style. What I mean by that is, if you are not naturally. Yes, most effective for awareness and nurturing leads. Yeah, great. Okay, good, good, good. If you can't do them all, yeah, and I wouldn't do them all. I would find a way. So, what I would firstly do is find what taps into your natural abilities. And what I mean by that is, I know I have a colleague who just cannot write, just does not like writing, and will just sit there staring at a blank screen. So, for him, writing articles and blog posts or creating white papers, he's just not going to do it. But he is able to speak. So for him, a podcast is a natural way. So I would say start with something that is most relevant for you, that feels natural for you. Now, you've also got to consider, where are my ideal clients hanging out, on what platforms, social media platforms. And then you also need to think about, well, on that platform, what specifically is working really well. Let me give you an example. I know on Instagram, whilst the feed and pictures are working well, what's really working well is video and stories. Now, you can, of course, tell stories in the story feature with graphics and text as well. However, what you do want to do is to ensure that you are communicating on that platform in a way that many people who are on that platform are engaging. But there are ways to overcome that. For instance, if you're not able to write, but you are able to speak, why not consider speaking and then transcribing, that content, and so that that becomes then an article that you can use. But so I would select maybe one or two and then try that out. However, having said that, maybe some of the one way that you're doing can be repurposed. So maybe for those of you who don't mind doing video, you might then strip the audio from that, get it transcribed, create little mini blog posts, create quote graphics, and can share that across. So the social media strategy can then really amplify what you're doing with a leverage strategy. So there's those things to consider as well. For some of you, you might love speaking and then be doing some virtual speaking events. So those are the kind of things that I would suggest. Start with what you know best. And if it taps into one of your talents, do that and do that really well. Selecting a platform where you know your ideal customers are on. It's like you're not going to be doing a whole lot of, say, videos and sharing it on a platform that you know your ideal client is not engaging in. So your content needs to be able to do that. Paul, yeah, video. That's right. Video's powerful mechanism as well. I think you do need to do all of them eventually, but start with what you know first and start with what feels comfortable for you and that you can start to get some wins. Because I tell you, if you are doing something which is just not comfortable, you're going to end up getting overwhelmed. Because remember also too, you've got to tweak your message and really start to see what is landing well, what's really cutting through the noise, what's working really well, and then continue to really amplify that with that podcast strategy. All righty, we are at the top of the hour. So I'm going to leave it here. I cannot wait to read your ahas so that I can see that you're getting some ticks, you're taking some golden nuggets away, and of course getting into the draw for the scholarship. Now I will see you back here same time tomorrow. We'll do a quick recap together, and then of course we'll see you back here on Monday where we do the celebration party, find out who won the scholarship, and of course introduce you to the program. So I'll see you then. Bye for now, everyone.